Okay, so I'm going to be talking about basically how porpoises move underwater in tidal habitats, trying to figure out what they might be doing. And I'd just like to start by thanking Jonathan Gordon, who's really been the driving force behind this project, Simon Northridge, who's the principal investigator, and Doug Gillespie, all from SMRU, who have been helping me out here. The problem, we don't know how porpoises use tidal habitats. We don't know if they stay at the surface, if they forage there, if they're just passing through. So we really have very little information on what they're doing there. And we need that information in order to assess the risk that tidal turbine developments might pose. So in order to investigate, especially the sort of collision risk question, what we need to do is look at how porpoises are underwater utilizing habitats, as well as what they're doing on the surface. Possible solutions. Well, you could try a visual study, but as I'm sure most of you are aware, we don't have 50-meter visibility in Scotland, so putting a video camera underwater is going to be pretty useless. Even if you're doing a visual study in a tidal area, looking at porpoises on the surface, they're often very rough areas, and so the detection range can be quite small, especially for porpoise. Tags, we could tag a porpoise. The quality of data from a tag is excellent, especially a new generation of tags. You can record the sound recordings, you have gyroscopes, magnetometers, accelerometers, it would be a great thing to do. But unfortunately, we haven't tagged any porpoises in the UK to date, and if we did tag a porpoise, the time it might spend in a tidal area could be minimal. So it's a very risky strategy. Passive acoustic monitoring, using the animal's own vocalizations to try and find out what it's doing, where it is an option. It's well developed in towed array surveys. We use it to figure out what porpoise densities are. But when we started this project, there's no practical sort of methodology that people had used in tidal areas. But this is the option we went for. So just to introduce you to the harbour porpoise, there's one there. That's a captive animal from Fjordebelt in Denmark. And they produce these really narrow band, high frequency vocalizations. They just click. They don't actually whistle like dolphins. They're very, very narrow bands, and they click, they vocalize around 130 kilohertz. And just to put that into context, when you were born, you may be heard up to 20 kilohertz. Right now, most of us, depending on age, will hear a lot less than that. And the other thing about porpoises is that they have a very narrow band click. So you might imagine their vocalization sort of propagating out like a beautiful, symmetric, uniform sphere, but that doesn't happen. You sort of got to imagine their vocalizations more like a flashlight. So they're sort of beaming across things, looking for things, echolocating to find prey, to sense their surroundings. And so this is a diagram with the porpoise in the center there, facing upwards. You can see that very high intensity. But if you were to put a hydrophone behind the porpoise, you wouldn't detect it, or you'd be unlikely to detect it. So, PAM in tidal areas. Well, there's several problems with using passive acoustic monitoring. One is noise, which we've just had a good talk on there. This is a long-term spectral average of a survey we did. And this is a porpoise up here. You can see these little faint bits. And this is a noisy patch. So it's a serious issue. It only seems to occur in some places where, I don't know, there may be gravel or something, but sometimes it can just max out the instruments. They have a narrow echolocation beam, which means that if we've got an array of hydrophones, they may only beam across some of them at a time. And that can be an issue if you're trying to localize. If you've got multiple animals present, well, we can figure out from a vocalization we detect on a hydrophone if it's a porpoise, but we can't figure out if it's a different individual from another one. So if you've got lots of animals present, you end up with this situation where you don't know which click on which hydrophone belongs to which porpoise, and it's actually quite a difficult problem to solve. If we're using a boat in a tidal area, we must have an array that's quickly recoverable because these are dangerous areas to work. And especially if we have a drifting system, we need to get it out of the water if we're heading towards land or some underwater obstruction. And finally, the technology to actually record porpoise vocalizations. These things, they echolocate 130 kilohertz, so you might use a 500 kilohertz sampling rate to sample them. That's 500,000 highly accurate measurements per second per hydrophone on your array. So actually, the technology to be able to use large arrays of hydrophones for porpoises, really, it's only been in the last few years that that's become available to us as researchers to use. So this is the system that we came up with to be able to determine the positions of porpoises underwater. And what it is, it's a drifting array. We couldn't put a static system in the water because we just didn't have the funding. I'm sure most of you, or a lot of you, will realize how expensive it would be to put an underwater frame or something in an 8-knot current. So we needed to use a drifting system. It's got a long vertical array of hydrophones that are on a rope, and then it's got this sort of little cluster of hydrophones here that are quite shallow. And so the idea is that the vertical array gives us the depth and the range of a porpoise, and this little cluster here, it gives us the heading. So we've got depth, range, heading, which is your 3-dimensional coordinates. The array moves underwater. We have differential currents, so it's going like this. So we need to use open tag sensors, which are little sort of accelerometer things to model where the array is. We have vector GPS. And the good thing about the drifting system is it's very quiet. There's no flow noise. So it's quite a neat little system. And we use National Instruments technology for the recording system. In order to record, we used PAMGuard, which is an open source software suite for passive acoustics. And we used that as our primary field recording tool, so to record all the WAV files, see if we were detecting porpoises in real time, and we used it as the post-analysis tool as well. And this idea of data mortgages, PAMGuard's been doing that for years, so we deal with terabytes and terabytes of data when we use this system, and we need to get it down and use sort of intelligent algorithms to be able to go through that data quickly and analyze it. One thing that PAMGuard didn't do very well, it's just a zoomed up picture, is that it didn't localize animals. It didn't deal with these large aperture arrays that are able to give you quite accurate localization. So we got funding from the Scottish Government to be able to build a module for PAMGuard, which would allow us to do that and make that module user-friendly in the broadest sense of the term. But, you know, so people who didn't have coding experience could use it, essentially. And so that's freely available now. So this will not crash. So the accuracy of the system. Well, here we have a pinger, which is the grey line that was producing simulated porpoise clicks. And here we have localizations from the array, which are the sort of red dots. This is depth here. This is the location of a pinger on a lat-long graph, and the green line is location of the boat. And then we have these red dots, which are the localization. So you can see there's a little bit of noise in this data, but it's overall, it's quite accurate. The accuracy decreases with range. So right next to the array, you can tell where a porpoise is within a few centimeters. But if you're further away, that accuracy decreases. And we can use intelligent tracking algorithms. So this is sort of the raw localization data, but we can use tracking algorithms to get rid of a lot of this noise and make the whole thing a little bit better. So I'm going to talk about a survey we did at Corryvreckan and the Great Race. This is a highly tidal area. It was, we just managed to get it on a week of perfect weather. We were incredibly lucky. So usually you wouldn't be able to survey this area with a boat, but we just managed it somehow. This is a summary of the data. There's this sort of tidal stream there. All these little coloured bits are porpoise dive fragments that we detected. So you can see here that we managed to get a lot of data here, which is really neat. So come on. Going to try and get a video to play. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is 10 minutes, I speeded up 10 minutes. And these little wormy coloured tracks here, these are dive fragments of porpoises. These are porpoises moving around the boat. This grey line is the boat here. This is porpoise soup, so it wasn't always as good, but there were loads of porpoises around at this moment. And what we get are dive fragments. We don't get these lovely, nice dive profiles usually. Sometimes we do, but we get a sort of porpoise, it beams the array, then we get the it beams the array, and then it will move either out of range or it will change its orientation, so we'll lose the dive fragment. And the interesting thing is that we were finding some of these fragments were down at 100 meters, and most of the porpoise dives were sort of in this 40-meter bracket here, but some of them were going a lot deeper than we expected. So what we can do with this data is we can get a depth distribution of porpoises, and we've got sort of two different ones here. Here the porpoise is right at the bottom, porpoises are spending most of their time there, and then here the majority were at the surface. So it's early days with this. The other thing is with the 3D tracks, we can maybe begin to look at this idea of flux, where animals move through a specific area. So that may be a turbine blade or it may be something else. But this is early days. There's a lot of work to do in this still. We've got to look at the probability of detection of a fragment, and there's a few problems we've got to pass there. The other interesting thing is that we can look at sort of dive behavior, tidal habitats. This is a foraging buzz just down here, right near the bottom, and you can see that up there in Palmgard. And it's possible to maybe build up a 3D beam profile of wild animals and really look at their echolocation behavior, what they actually are doing in these habitats, why they might be there, why they might be using them. So you need a lot of kit for this system, and this is amplifiers, laptops, DAC cards, and you sometimes end up in a situation, well, every time you end up in a situation like this, where it's just a complete mess of wires and everything breaks, and you spend half an hour trying to figure out, it's not good. But anyway, with the sort of push towards mobile technology, all this stuff has really come down in size. So this can now be this, and really that means we can move on to an autonomous system. So we can forget using the boat, and we can put this thing on a buoy, which can be deployed for a period of maybe 48 hours or slightly longer. So this is what we have funding. This is what we have funding to do at the moment. It will record raw WAV files. It will be deployable from a RIB. First testing is this summer, and this is funded by NERC, so it will be open hardware, it will be open software, and be available to all the consulting companies that want to try and use this system in their surveys. So in summary, PAM can be used to accurately track porpoises underwater. It can look at interesting behavior. It should provide some of the data required for collision risk models, and we've tried to make it as open as possible, and we're building a buoy to be able to do this, to hopefully make it simpler for people and to hopefully make it cheaper and a more cost-effective system out of academia into consultancies and environmental monitoring. And I'd just like to thank these people, and that's it.
Well, you did that very well. We've got a couple minutes for questions. I'll start with you. Is it possible to actually collect at the same time? Is there enough space on your mooring system to collect at the same time some physical data?
What do you mean by physical data? Sort of.
Simplest things as temperature.
Well, the tags do record the temperature. Yeah, so the little accelerometers record temperature. And yes, there would. I mean, if other sensors could go in there, as long as they didn't interfere with the hydrophone system. So, but in terms, it records it records noise. It's just raw sound data.
Does the system give any indication of the animal's orientation at the stream?
Well, yeah. Well, we've got this tracking algorithm. So if you imagine you get a series of dots, and then you can sort of basically simply join the dots up, and then you could predict that the animal that its orientation was somewhere along that track, but it doesn't give you a precise orientation. But it's certainly you know if it's going down or you know if it's going up, but you may not know it to percentages of degrees. Mm-hmm.
How can you tell if it's you're recording reflection, an echo?
Well, if you try and localize an echo, it's often above the seabed. So unless you think your porpoise is flying, then usually that you can figure out echoes that way. If it's an echo that's from the seabed, then often the localization will break down, because that echo won't have been detected sort of coherently on all the hydrophones, or it'll be below the seabed. So if you've got bathymetry data, you can get rid of those as well. But yes, there's definitely, you do get that noise is probably